Let me tell you something real quick, nothing prepares you for the moment your own father tries to destroy you in public. Not behind closed doors. Not with whispers. But loud, ugly. In a courtroom packed with strangers who don't know your history. Only the version he's screaming. He's unstable. She's embarrassing this family. That was my dad, red-faced, veins popping, fingers shaking, like he was auditioning for the role of victim of the year. And me, I didn't say a word, I sat there calm still, hands folded, checked my watch, Tunyo 2M right on time, because this meltdown he was having, this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Judge Harris stared at him over her glasses, completely unreadable, no nod, no reaction, just silence. The dangerous kind. Then she leaned forward and asked one simple question that sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Mr. Caldwell, do you actually know who your daughter is? You could hear it. The shift. His lawyer froze mid-page flip. Color drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out right there at the defense table. But my father? He laughed. That laugh. The same one I'd heard my whole life. The laugh that said you're nothing. The laugh that said I own you. And while he laughed, I let my mind drift, because this story didn't start in that courtroom. It started years ago. When I learned silence was stronger than screaming, I didn't look at him. Didn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I stared at dust floating through a beam of sunlight cutting across the polished wood floor. Funny how moments like that slow everything down. 4 months earlier, Christmas Eve. We were sitting at the long dining table in his house. The one everyone thought he paid for. He lifted his glass of expensive whiskey, smirking like a king holding court. I handed him my new business card. He didn't even read it. Tossed it on the table like trash. A consultant. He laughed. That what we're calling unemployed now? Cute little hobby, sweetheart. Everyone went quiet. I felt that familiar heat creep up my neck. The feeling of being the family disappointment. The daughter who didn't marry rich. Didn't play along. Didn't fit the picture. But what he didn't know, while he was laughing, my hubby had just landed a multi-million-dollar federal contract auditing corporate fraud. He saw a drifter. I saw a woman who'd built something lethal in silence. Back in the courtroom, his voice snapped me out of the memory. She hasn't spoken once, Your Honor. She's clearly medicated. This is not normal behavior. He wanted control. Always had. He told the judge I lived in a shoebox apartment. That I hid because I was ashamed. That I had no husband. No kids. No legacy. I almost smiled. Because the apartment he was talking about, I owned the entire building. Including the office space his firm rented. He had no idea his landlord had his last name, and watching him rant, watching him unravel, was like watching a man argue with his own reflection. Without realizing the mirror was loaded. His lawyer was sweating now, scrolling, tapping, panic in every movement. Because the document the bailiff handed him, it wasn't about my grandmother's trust. It was about me, my assets, my companies, my signature. See, I wasn't there to fight for inheritance. I didn't need anyone's money. I was there because my father tried to erase me, tried to label me unstable, tried to lock me up. Tried to steal my freedom using the law he thought only he understood. And that's the thing about people like him. They never imagine the quiet one learned the rules better than they did. When he finally paused for breath, the courtroom was dead silent. Judge Harris flipped through pages slowly, deliberately, paper turning, breathing heavy, tension thick enough to choke on. My father straightened his tie like he'd already won. He didn't realize the ground under him was gone. I looked up and met the judge's eyes. She gave me the slightest nod. That was my cue. The trap was set. And in the next moment, everything he thought he knew about power, about control, about me, was about to collapse. Let me hit you with something heavy right up front. The scariest betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the person who knows your full name, your birthday, and exactly which lie will hurt the most. Because 2 years before that courtroom showdown, my father didn't just insult me. He tried to erase me legally. And I never told anyone this part. Until now. The judge was still flipping through documents when my mind drifted again. Not backward gently, but violently. like being yanked underwater by your own memories. 2 years ago. Tuesday morning, 9:17 a.m. I remember the time because I was closing a high-level audit call with a tech company that didn't play small. Government badges on the screen. Serious people. That's when the knock came. Not polite, not patient. Authority-level knocking. I opened the door to two police officers. One of them spoke carefully, like he was reading from a script. "Ma'am, we have an involuntary psychiatric hold order. We need you to come with us." Just like that. No warning, no conversation, no explanation. I didn't panic, I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I asked one question. "Who signed it?" They exchanged a look. Then one of them said his name. "My father. See, while I was building my life quietly, he was drowning. His law firm, bleeding money, payroll behind, loans stacking up, creditors calling. And instead of downsizing, instead of asking for help, he decided I was the solution, not me as a person, me as an asset. He'd forged a doctor's statement. Claimed I was delusional. Said I believed I ran businesses that didn't exist. Said I was burning through inheritance money. The plan was simple. Lock me up for 72 hours. File emergency conservatorship papers. Take control of everything I owned. Clean, legal, cruel. But here's what he didn't count on. Reality. The officers stepped into my apartment. Clean, minimal, organized. And on my laptop screen behind me, a live call with federal agents waiting for me to unmute. One officer raised an eyebrow. 5 minutes later, they left, and that was the moment I stopped trying to fix my father. That was the moment I decided to outgrow him permanently. Back in the courtroom, my father was still talking, still painting himself as the hero. "She's terrified," he said loudly. "She knows she needs me." No, I wasn't terrified, I was finished. Because instead of reporting him back then, instead of pressing charges, I did something much more dangerous. I studied him. I learned how he moved money, how he cut corners, how his ego replaced his intelligence. And then, I became his lifeline. The morning after the failed psychiatric hold, I registered a company. Generic name. Clean paperwork. No emotional fingerprints. A company designed to be invisible. Through that company, I approached his bank, offered to buy his toxic debt. They were thrilled. I bought everything: loans, credit lines, equipment liens. Then, just to seal it, I wired him fresh capital, 6 figures. No questions asked. And my father, he didn't ask who I was. Didn't read the contract. Didn't even Google the company. He just saw money hit his account and assumed the universe had finally apologized to him. That money didn't save his firm. It exposed him. Thanksgiving dinner, he pulled up in a vintage sports car like he'd won the lottery. Revved the engine. Smiled too wide. Sat at the head of the table carving turkey like a king dividing spoils. Then he looked right at me. "Maybe if you applied yourself," he said, wine staining his teeth, "you wouldn't be such a financial burden." I smiled. Ate my potatoes. Let him enjoy the car he didn't know already belonged to me. Back in court, his lawyer finally leaned toward him, whispering frantically. Papers shaking. Hands trembling. My father waved him off. "I'm making a point," he snapped, and that's when the judge spoke again. Ice cold. "You might want to listen to your attorney." She lifted one document. Just one. "Because according to this, the plaintiff isn't just your daughter." She paused. "She's your primary creditor." The courtroom shifted, not loud, not dramatic, just heavy, like gravity doubled. My father laughed. That same ugly laugh, but it cracked this time. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't in control of the room. Let me tell you something they don't teach you about powerful men. They don't collapse all at once. First they laugh, because laughter is the last shield before reality punches back. My father laughed so hard it echoed off the courtroom walls. "My creditor," he scoffed, straightening his tie. "That's ridiculous. My daughter can barely manage her own life. You expect me to believe she runs a financial operation?" A few people in the gallery shifted. Someone coughed. The judge didn't flinch. Neither did I, because this was where his arrogance did the work for me. "You see?" he continued, pacing like he was delivering a closing argument. "This is exactly what I've been saying. Delusions of grandeur. She thinks she's some big executive. She lives in a rundown apartment downtown. Drives a dented sedan. Successful people don't live like that. He turned to the judge, smug. She's embarrassed herself enough. Sign the conservatorship order. I looked down at my shoes. Scuffed, not designer. Not shiny. He thought that meant something. What he didn't know. Those shoes had climbed through a warehouse window 3 days earlier, while I was verifying inventory on a fraud case worth more than his entire firm. I didn't wear wealth. I weaponized it. The judge exhaled slowly and removed her glasses. That was the moment every lawyer in the room recognized danger. "Mr. Caldwell," she said calmly, "you will sit down." Now, he didn't. That was mistake number 1. "She lives in the Meridian," he shouted, desperate now. That crumbling brick building downtown. Rats, broken elevators, no doorman. And you want me to believe she's a CEO? The word crumbling hung in the air. I bit the inside of my cheek. Because yes, there were rats. Before I bought the building. Before I renovated it. Before I turned the top floor into a private penthouse. Before his rent checks started landing in an account with my signature. His lawyer stood abruptly. "Your Honor. Sit down," the judge snapped. Then she reached for another document. Slow, deliberate, and slid it across the bench. "This is the deed," she said. "The Meridian building." My father froze, actually froze, like his brain hit a wall. That's impossible," he muttered. "My landlord is Vanguard Real Estate." The judge nodded. "Correct." She flipped the page. "And Vanguard Real Estate is owned by Vanguard Holdings." Another page. "And Vanguard Holdings," she looked directly at him, "is solely owned by your daughter." The silence wasn't silence anymore. It was shock. The kind that rearranges reality. My father stared at the paper, then at me, then back at the judge. "No," he whispered. Then louder. "No, this is fraud." He turned to his lawyer, panic finally cracking his voice. "Tell her. This violates ABA rules. Non-lawyers can't own law firms." I leaned forward, just slightly. He thought he found the loophole. He thought he was smart. That was mistake number 2. "You're right," I said softly. That was the first time I spoke all morning. "I can't own your firm." He smiled. Relief flooded his face. "You see?" he said loudly. "She admitted it?" I stood up. He didn't notice his lawyer shrinking into his chair. "I didn't buy your firm," I continued. "I bought your debt." The smile vanished. I walked toward him, each step slow, intentional. "I memorized the rules before I moved $1, I said calmly. "I didn't invest in you. I didn't partner with you." I stopped right in front of him. "I became your senior secured creditor." His lawyer went pale. Because he knew exactly what that meant. I pointed to the clause in the contract. "Default on character," I said. "Publicly defaming your guarantor triggers immediate acceleration." I glanced at my watch. "Congratulations. The loan is due." His face drained of color. "I don't have that kind of money," he whispered. "I know." That was mistake number 3. I turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I'm calling the loan. I'm requesting asset seizure." His lawyer stood up in a panic. "If she does that, the firm collapses." "I accept your resignation," I said flatly. That's when my father snapped. He grabbed his phone. "I planned for this," he yelled. "I'm filing bankruptcy. Automatic stay. You get nothing." The confirmation screen lit up. He leaned back, smiling. Checkmate, he thought. I didn't smile. "Bankruptcy protects companies," I said quietly. Then I placed the final document on the table. "But not personal guarantees." He stared. "You signed one." The room went dead. "You didn't bankrupt your firm," I said softly. "You bankrupted yourself. Here's the truth nobody warns you about. When a man loses power, he doesn't fall apart quietly. He panics. He lashes out. And then, he tells on himself." The courtroom felt smaller all of a sudden. Like the walls had leaned in to watch the ending. My father stared at the document in front of him, like it was written in a foreign language. His lips moved, but no sound came out. The man who'd dominated every room his whole life suddenly looked misplaced. Like a king who'd wandered into the wrong castle. That's not enforceable," he finally muttered. "That's intimidation." I tilted my head, calm, almost bored. "No," I said. "That's contract law." His lawyer didn't even try to help him this time. He was already packing his briefcase. Slow, careful movements. The kind people make when they're standing next to a sinking ship and hoping no one notices they're swimming away. The judge leaned forward, and when Judge Harris leaned forward, people listened. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, voice sharp as broken glass, "you filed for conservatorship claiming your daughter was incompetent." She paused. "Yet according to this evidence, she has managed complex financial instruments, federal audits, commercial real estate, and your firm's debt without error." She set the papers down. "That suggests a level of competence far beyond your own." The gallery shifted. Someone inhaled sharply. My father stood up again. "No. This is manipulation," he shouted. "She did this to humiliate me. She planned this." I didn't deny it. I let him keep talking, because every word he spoke now was another nail. "You're my daughter," he yelled, turning toward me. "You owe me loyalty." There it was. Not love. Not regret. Ownership. Judge Harris slammed the gavel once. Hard. "'Nough." The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Mr. Caldwell, you attempted to weaponize the mental health system to seize your daughter's assets. You failed." She leaned back. "You then proceeded to publicly defame the same individual who legally holds your debt." Another pause. "And you did so under oath." My father swallowed. For the first time in my life, he didn't have a comeback. "Court is prepared to rule," the judge said. My pulse stayed steady. Because I already knew the ending. Conservatorship petition, denied, with prejudice. The words hit him like a punch. Asset seizure, approved. His knees buckled. Commercial eviction, effective immediately. His lawyer stood and left without a single backward glance. "Mr. Caldwell," Judge Harris continued, "you have 24 hours to vacate your residence. Failure to comply will result in forced removal." She brought the gavel down again. Court dismissed. That was it. No dramatic music, no screaming finale, just silence. The kind of silence that comes when a lifetime of intimidation finally runs out of oxygen. My father didn't look at me as I walked past him. Not angry. Not pleading. Just empty. That evening, I stood across the street and watched the locksmith drill through the office door of what used to be his firm. The nameplate came off first, metal hitting cardboard. Final. I didn't feel joy, I felt light. People think revenge tastes sweet. They're wrong. It tastes like relief, because what I took back wasn't money. It was space. Breath. Freedom. That first night, after the courtroom, after the locksmith, after the paperwork and signatures and final stamps that ended my father's empire, I went home alone. No victory dinner. No celebration. No calls to friends. Just me. And a quiet apartment that didn't feel like a hiding place anymore. I kicked off my shoes by the door and stood there longer than I needed to. Just breathing, deep, slow. Like my body was finally asking permission to relax. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel watch. My phone buzzed. His name. I didn't answer. I stared at the screen and felt something strange. Not anger, not fear, detachment. The kind you get when you realize the person on the other end no longer has access to you. I didn't block him. I deleted the contact. Just a number now. That mattered more than I expected. The next few days were quiet, but not peaceful. Old memories came knocking. The first time he told me I wasn't marriage material. The night he laughed when I said I wanted to build something of my own. The way he always said, "You'd be nothing without me." Turns out, those words leave bruises you don't see until the thread is gone. On the third night, there was a knock at my door. Not loud, careful. I already knew who it was. I opened the door and there he stood, older somehow, smaller. The confidence gone, replaced by something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. "I just want to talk," he said. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite him in. "I don't," I replied. And for the first time, I didn't explain myself. "You didn't have to destroy me," he said, voice cracking. I almost laughed. "I didn't destroy you," I said calmly. "I stopped saving you." That hit harder than any insult. Because it was true. I had spent years shrinking so he could feel tall. And I was done. He left without another word. No apology. No accountability. Just the echo of footsteps fading down the hallway. And oddly enough, that was enough. The weeks that followed felt strange. My company grew. My cases expanded. My days got fuller, but my nights, they got quieter. I slept better, I laughed more. I stopped bracing for impact. One evening, I caught my reflection in the mirror and realized something hit me different. I wasn't proving anything anymore. Not to him. Not to anyone. I wasn't the strong one. I was just free. People ask me now if I regret it. If I wish I'd handled it differently. Here's the truth. You don't heal by begging the person who broke you to understand. You heal by walking away without needing permission. When the war outside ends, the real fight begins inside your head. I thought once the court case was over, everything would magically fall into place, like life would hand me peace wrapped in a bow for surviving what I did. That's not how it works. The noise didn't stop all at once. It faded in waves. Some days, I woke up feeling 10 pounds lighter, like I could finally breathe without bracing for impact. Other days, I woke up furious for no reason, heart racing, jaw clenched, replaying conversations that ended years ago. That's when I realized something uncomfortable. I had won, but I was still reacting, and reacting meant he still had access to me. One morning, I caught myself practicing what I'd say if he ever confronted me again. Full speeches. Sharp comebacks. Perfect timing. I froze mid-thought. Why was I still rehearsing for a man who no longer had a role in my life? That's when it hit me. Power doesn't leave just because you take it back. It leaves when you stop explaining yourself to ghosts. I canceled meetings that day. No emergencies. No fires. Just me and a long walk through the city. I watched people rush past, headphones in, coffee in hand, problems I'd never know. And for the first time, I felt anonymous, not invisible. Anonymous, there's a difference. Invisible means erased. Anonymous means unnowned. And I like that. I stopped chasing closure. Let me tell you something honest. Closure is overrated. People think closure comes from conversations, apologies, confessions. It doesn't. Closure comes from acceptance without permission. From saying, this is as good as it's ever going to get. And that's enough. A month later, I ran into someone from my childhood. Someone who knew my father when he was untouchable. He's not doing well, they said carefully. I nodded. Not smug, not sad, just neutral. Because his downfall wasn't my responsibility to mourn, and my survival didn't require his collapse. That night I made a list. Not goals. Not dreams, boundaries. What I would no longer tolerate. What I would never explain again. What I would walk away from the first time, not the 10th. It was the most powerful document I'd ever signed. The truth. I didn't need to become ruthless. I needed to become selective. Selective with my energy. Selective with my empathy. Selective with who got access to my life. The old me believed love meant endurance. The new me learned love means safety, and anything that costs your peace isn't love. It's a transaction you can cancel. I stopped answering questions that felt like traps. Stopped shrinking to make people comfortable. Stopped apologizing for taking up space. And something wild happened. People adjusted. Or they disappeared. Both outcomes were wins. One night, standing by my window, city lights blinking like quiet witnesses, I realized the truth I wish I'd learned sooner. You don't have to burn bridges. You just have to stop crossing them. Most people don't repeat trauma because they want to. They repeat it because it's familiar, and familiarity is seductive. After everything settled, people expected me to be different in one specific way. They thought I'd become cold, ruthless, untouchable. Another version of the man I walked away from. But that wasn't the victory I wanted. Because power without awareness just creates new monsters, and I refused to become one. I started noticing patterns. The way I flinched at raised voices, even when no one was angry. The way I explained my decisions to people who hadn't earned that right. The way I mistook intensity for passion and control for care. That's when I understood something dangerous. I hadn't escaped the cycle. I had just stepped outside of it. Breaking it required intention. I hired a therapist. Not because I was broken, but because I was done pretending strength meant silence. And for the first time, I said the words out loud. My father tried to erase me. Saying it didn't shatter me, it freed me. Because truth doesn't weaken you, it reorganizes you. Week by week, I unlearned survival. I learned how to rest without guilt. How to say no without rehearsing. How to trust without surrendering my spine. That's harder than it sounds. When chaos is all you know, peace feels suspicious. But I stayed. One afternoon, I was asked to mentor a young woman starting her own firm. She was sharp, hungry, terrified of being too much. I saw myself in her fear. And I told her the one thing I wish someone had told me sooner. Your power doesn't scare people. Their lack of control does. She cried. So did I, later alone. Because healing isn't linear. It's layered. I stopped trying to rewrite the past. I didn't need a better father. I needed to become a better guardian of myself. That realization closed a door I didn't know was still open. Months later, I passed the courthouse where everything ended. I didn't slow down. Didn't look back. That building no longer held my story. I carried it with me. Lighter now, quieter, refined. Here's what breaking the cycle really looks like. It's choosing peace even when chaos feels familiar. It's recognizing red flags without needing proof. It's walking away before the damage, not after. And most importantly, it's refusing to hand your future to someone who couldn't handle your past. I didn't win because he lost. I won because I stopped playing his game. And that's the only victory that lasts. People love the courtroom part of the story. They love the power flip. The exposure. The moment the villain realizes he lost. That's the clip that goes viral. But that's not the ending. The real ending happens later. When no one's watching, when the adrenaline is gone, when life asks you a simple question, who are you when the fight is over? At first, I didn't know. For so long, my identity was built in opposition. Proving, surviving, outlasting. Even success had been sharpened into a weapon. I didn't build my life to enjoy it. I built it to never be powerless again. And that realization hit me harder than anything my father ever did. Because trauma doesn't just hurt you. It trains you. So I made a decision, one that felt small but changed everything. I chose a quieter life. Not smaller, not weaker, quieter. I stopped chasing rooms where I had to be the loudest voice to be heard. Stopped accepting meetings that felt like battles. Stopped measuring my worth by how much I could endure. And something strange happened. My life expanded. I moved through my days without armor. I built friendships where silence wasn't awkward. Where success wasn't a competition. Where love didn't feel like a negotiation. I learned how to enjoy my work instead of using it as proof. I learned how to rest. That one took the longest. Every once in a while, someone still asks about my father. Do you talk? Do you regret it? Would you do it differently? I answer honestly, no. And no. Because regret assumes there was a better option. There wasn't. There was survival or surrender. And I chose survival with boundaries. Here's the lesson I want you to take with you. The one I wish I had learned sooner. You don't owe loyalty to someone who weaponized love. You don't owe silence to someone who benefited from it. And you don't owe forgiveness to move forward. Healing doesn't require reconciliation. It requires clarity. If you're listening to this and seeing yourself in it, if someone in your life has convinced you that your strength is a flaw, that your independence is disrespect, that your boundaries are cruelty, hear me clearly, that's not love. That's control wearing a familiar face. I didn't become heartless. I became self-led. I didn't shut people out. I started choosing who got in. And that changed everything. The greatest revenge isn't success. It's peace. The kind no one can take from you. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. The kind that lets you sleep at night without rehearsing defenses. I didn't destroy a man. I dismantled a lie. The lie that I needed permission to exist. And if you take nothing else from this story, take this. You are allowed to outgrow the people who taught you how to survive. You are allowed to choose yourself without guilt. And you are allowed to live a life so full, so grounded, so peaceful that the past finally loses its voice. This wasn't the story of a courtroom. It was the story of a woman who stopped asking to be seen and started living like she already was.